Do you know how much time it takes to change your shape? The bad news, it is longer than you think. The good news, it is shorter than it's taking you right now. I've had friends say, my birthday is in 2 weeks. I'm gonna start my diet now so I look my best then. And then they're really disappointed. And I've had clients say, I'm turning 40 next year. I'm going to start the strategy now. And then they create the best shapes of their lives. So yes, it takes months or more. Most of my clients see significant change in 4 months and then reach their full goals by 8 to 12 months. But when done strategically, that doesn't mean you're strict dieting the entire time. And the good news is that year will pass anyway. And most who don't have a strategy will be in the exact same spot next summer. So it still takes a lot less time than it's taking some now. In this episode, I'm breaking down the exact amount of weeks to build 5 pounds of muscle and decrease 15 pounds of body fat, why this doesn't mean months of strict dieting, and what you can start now right after summer. So let's get into it. Per usual, today I am covering the science, the structure, and the strategy for the time it takes to change your shape. Science, structure, strategy is really the core foundation of changing your shape, and that's exactly why this podcast emphasizes it, but it's also why it's the core pillars of my Create Your Shape program. The next Create Your Shape class starts July 27th, 2026, so just a few more weeks. And everything I'm discussing here, I teach and educate, and we implement and embed it into your life to not only build your shape, but also build your understanding of it and build your structures and routine to make it sustainable for the long term. That is how every year you build off of it and gets better and better. And why I've had 50-year-olds say, oh, I'm in way better shape now than I was in my 20s. The goal is not a short-term crash diet or a vague, like, okay, here's a random workout plan just so you can get moving and feeling better, or to just have like a set of macros and that's all you know. And it's not for somebody who is not really into fitness and is just kind of like, oh, this is something I have to do, or somebody who has a ton of weight to lose, like 100 pounds, 70 pounds. That's really not who this is for. This is for the professional female who enjoys working out and lifting weights, who it is part of her identity. She wants her shape to represent the work that she's already putting in and likes that, oh, this is a challenge and this is a challenge I know I can accomplish and I want to learn it and I want to do it right. The goal is to be healthy. It's to be strong. It's to be like sustainable. And this is just who you are and how you operate. And it's to look like you lift weights, to be fit, to have the rounded shoulder caps, the defined arms, the core lines, the glutes in the leggings with the hamstrings and the quads showing, like to go be able to play tennis on a random afternoon just because you know you can, or go on a hike. And it's never having to be like, oh, I don't think I can do that activity because I don't know if I can. It's like, oh yeah, of course I can. I'm strong, I'm fit, and I'm going to look good while I do it. And I have some who love to look the part, but also they're like, yeah, I'm still stronger than my kids who are getting into sports. And they want it to really sustain them for the long term. So this is what this program's all about, for ladies to look like they lift weights. We're starting in just a few weeks. You can join us at the link in the show notes at jennythenutritionist.com/create-your-shape. All right, so let's get into the science in the structure, in the strategy for how long it takes. So I'm going to be very straight and make it very clear. To build muscle, the science is, for the ladies that I work with, right? You've worked out maybe consistently, or you've had weights in your hand consistently. It will take about, you can build about 1 to 2 pounds of muscle per month. So 5 pounds, which 1 to 2 is noticeable for sure. 5 pounds is very noticeable. And I find that's really what a lot of my ladies are going for, that 5 pounds. So that may take 2 to 3. Now, this is assuming in those 2 to 3 months that it's just not vague lifting or vague working out, that you are pairing your nutrition with that. So you're eating enough, and you're eating enough of the right food specific for you, and you're on a progressive overload training program, and you're progressing weekly on that program. So there's the caveat there, right? Like it's not just, oh, I'll just work out and this magically happens. It doesn't casually happen. Now, what is the science behind decreasing body fat? You can decrease about 1 pound of body fat per week. And so 15 pounds would take about 15 weeks or about 3-ish months. But that is pure body fat. I'm not talking about a crash diet where you decrease some inflammation and some water retention for, you drop a couple pounds in a week. And then as soon as you eat that food again, you gain it back because it's not really body fat. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about pure body fat. This is what I'm talking about, like actually recomping and actually changing your body composition. However, that assumes that during that time frame, you are in a calorie deficit consistently. Again, this will not casually happen. There is strategy behind it. So that is the science for how long it takes, about 2 to 3 months to build 5 pounds muscle and about 15 weeks to decrease 15 pounds of body fat. And those are at separate time frames. Now, let's talk about the structure of this, because most of you, generally all of my ladies, they're not here just because they want to do a crash diet or they just want a short-term effect or want to look good for a weekend. They're like, no, I want this. I want to truly change my body composition. I want it to be like who I am and how I operate for the long term. And I don't want it to feel like it is a process and a headache and a weight on me every single time I wake up and I gotta fight and it's willpower. They don't want that. They want it to feel like, oh, this is easy. This is just how I live my life. I just understand how it works. I know what to do. I'm not crazy restricting myself. I know how to fuel myself. I know how for it to feel good. I know where I can add a bit more flexibility. I know how to be savvy with it. That is what they're looking for, to have a shape that they build and they feel confident executing it, but then they feel good by building off of it year after year. And so what that looks like when it comes to the structure, that means you have to build in, let's say if we're building muscle, you've got to build in time to do all the things that I mentioned before of how it actually works, of eating enough. Okay, that's a skill you have to learn. I had a client who we were working on eating enough so she could build muscle, and she is a high project manager for the Dallas airport. I might be butchering it exactly, but they're opening new terminals all the time and she's in charge of that. So some weeks for her are crazy, and sometimes she's on different sites, different projects, and on site. And so when we're working to get her enough carbs, she's like, I'm having a hard time getting these carbs in. We got to come up with solutions for that, and it's a practice. And so to make it habitual, to make it routine, what type of carbs, how can she store them? What does it look like when she misses a meal? All these things are part of it to really make it consistent. And so you also got to consider there's times where you're going to have a crazy busy work week at work, that executing the training program isn't going to happen the way that you want to. You may not progress. Sometimes you're just getting it going and getting it in, but in order to build this muscle, you've got to be progressing. And so what does that look like in terms of the execution of the movements? And that's why I do form reviews with my ladies. That's why we track weights to see, okay, where are we getting hung up? Where isn't the progression happening? Or what's the struggle with work and schedule that we have to solve for? So all of that may take some extra weeks, but that's what makes it really doable and sustainable for long term, to solve all of these problems along the way. And of course, you have things like vacation or getting sick that you want to consider as well. So that's when it comes to building muscle. And then there's other ways we fine tune, right? With nutrient timing. How can we stack food around before and after your workouts to get even more out of it? So all this to say that yes, there's a certain science behind the time frame, but we are humans that have to learn the skill of executing it and executing it for us so we can do it for the long term. The next is decreasing body fat. So again, doing a calorie deficit phase is a skill. You want to learn the skill first, and I like to pair that, when I work with my ladies, I pair that while we're building intake, so that way we don't waste time in the deficit phase. And I've just done this enough time to know, okay, we can fit this in here, we can learn this here. So then when you get to the deficit phase, it doesn't feel like maybe you've done in the past where you just feel hangry and you got to do a math problem every single time you eat and it feels stressful and you feel super restricted. It should feel oh, This is just like repeatable. I'm on autopilot. I'm seeing progress. I know my start date, I know my end date, and it should be very like clear cut. But with that, as I said, it's a skill that you have to learn of hitting macros daily. Doesn't mean it's hard. It's just a skill that you have to learn in considering non-progress weeks in that. Like that is again just part of the human nature where you have things come up, you have a vacation, you have an off week, right? And how we handle those as part of the overall strategy and the mindset is part of that. Okay, so that's the structure. Now let's talk about strategy. So based on all this information, this is what I suggest and I've seen work really well and what I do with my ladies, especially in Create Your Shape. For 2 months, you want to be building muscle. And so that means you're eating enough, which also is great to prime you for a future deficit, feel better, have more energy, have more flexibility with food. Like really during that time, it also gives you the space to learn food, create your systems. This is where I go back to that structure where you're learning, you're creating your routines and making it on autopilot. So I would schedule about 2 months for that. And then schedule about 2 to 3 months to be in a calorie deficit phase. This is the part where it does feel like a diet, where you are being intentional. However, because you've done the primer phase, it should feel way easier than any crazy diet you've done before. You should be eating more than before. You should have more, you shouldn't be hangry. You should really, again, feel like it's on autopilot. So that's a calorie deficit phase. I don't recommend more than like 10 to 12 weeks. If it's your first deficit, it may even be like 8 to 10. But I don't recommend more than 10 to 12. Beyond that is when your metabolism can start to like adapt more than you want it to, and you want to go back into the first phase of eating enough, building muscle to kind of reset mentally as well before going into another one. And so for some people, to reach their goal, they may need 2 phases of this, and that's totally fine. I see that often. But again, going back to the point of how much time does this take, you want to consider that. So the next then is after the deficit phase, you want to plan for that 1 to 2 months to reverse out of the deficit phase, so going back to eating enough and just maintaining and eating enough, enjoying it, enjoying your new shape, like maintaining the shape that you created, going on, having holidays, going on trips, going on vacations. Like that is that like mental time frame where you can just say, okay, like that was something I put effort into working on, learning, progressing, and now I'm enjoying the fruits of my labor. And I have some people that they're like, yep, I'm good. I feel great. That's all I wanted. But a lot of my ladies, if you're like me, if you're like them, you're always going to have a new goal. Maybe you initially had a bigger goal and you're like, okay, now I'm ready to go into the next phase to continue to progress. Now, then you repeat. Generally, I find when you repeat the second time, you get much more out of it because you've already got the baseline skill. So you've already got that like skill down, and now you can move faster and or add in more advanced things on top of that. So what this may look like for coming up for this year, to going into, as we end summer, going into fall, holidays, and then next year, it may look like, this would be my suggestion, August, September timeframe, you're really focused on that building muscle, and you are focused on priming yourself for a future deficit, and you're focused on gaining the skill of nutrition and routine in your nutrition system and really systemizing it and embedding it into your life. Then October, November, and it may not be this exact amount, right? There may be some like a little bit earlier, maybe mid-September than October to mid-November, right? I'm just giving kind of general here. Then October, November is when you do a deficit phase and you focus on decreasing body fat. You want to end this before Thanksgiving week, before the Friendsgiving, before the holiday trip starts, before you enjoy your turkey meal. So again, that's very strategic. Then in December, January, you just want to maintain. You want to enjoy your holidays, enjoy the like winter months, enjoy your shape. Like, you should feel, because you built some muscle, you've decreased body fat, you should feel like, oh yeah, I look so much better. I'm gonna wear this holiday dress. I'm gonna look good at these parties. I'm going to like have maybe my shoulder caps out on this like turtleneck sweater that has like the like sleeveless dress. That those were like always my go-to. So like you want to feel like, yeah, I'm enjoying my shape, and also I don't feel like I just did a diet and now I'm like rebounding. I feel like I have the tools, I have the system, I have the understanding of how to do the holidays, but do them in a way that feels balanced and good and flexible, but also directional and like confident in what you're executing in the day, like day in and day out. Then I would repeat that same thing in Q1, Q2-ish of next year to take the shape to the next level. Well, that means build more muscle or decrease more body fat. And then that gets you right to the beginning of summer to really create this shape that has just taken it to the next level from where you're at now. So then next summer looks like maybe you're getting a bunch of new clothes, maybe you have a new bikini, maybe you're like rocking the new trend that before you're like, I don't really know if I can do that because it doesn't look right on me. Like, you're feeling good in your shape, but I think more importantly than that, you feel good like understanding the strategy behind it and how it works, how to maintain it, and then how to build off of it if you want to, and continue to make progress on that, because it is a hobby of yours and it's something that you prioritize now to not only look the part, but like feel good and feel like you can constantly progress. So every Create Your Shape class that I do like is designed with this in mind, with like this science and strategy in mind. They just don't like randomly start. They're really intentional to make sure that the person gets the most out of it with the time frame, considering holidays and the natural like seasons that we have. And this is exactly why the next Create Your Shape class starts on July 27th, so we can follow this exactly and really have you looking and feeling your best, not only for like holidays, but for next summer and really beyond, like to build off of that year after year. So if you would like to join us in Create Your Shape, now is the time to get set up. You immediately get the foundational guidelines along with the training program, so you can get started on. You can get your blood work done, which is optional, but I highly recommend it. So then when we get started on the 27th, like you're ready to go. And then we get started building muscle, like optimizing, is that a word? Optimizing, there we go. Your nutrition, eating enough, pairing that with your training, learning, creating your routines, and then go into that first deficit phase. All right, I will see you next week on the Create Your Shape podcast.